Welcome to Men Unplugged with your host, Jeff Jerina. Get ready to plug in and recharge your life as Jeff visits with influential Christian leaders, helping you experience the life you were truly meant to live.
Hey, how's it going? Jeff Jerina here, and welcome to episode 10 of the Men Unplugged Show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Recharge by getting your free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Men Unplugged. Again, all you have to do is type AUDIBLE trial.com/Men Unplugged. And don't forget to sign up to the weekly Men Unplugged email list. When you do that, I'll send you a free PDF copy of my book, 10 Steps to Power and Purpose. All right, let's meet today's featured guest. He's no stranger to helping others. In fact, he hosts the #1 nationally syndicated Christian counseling talk show, New Life Live. As a gifted communicator, he's been featured in media venues such as Good Morning America, CNN Live, GQ, and Rolling Stone. As a best-selling author, he's written over 20 books, including Every Man's Battle. Joining me now, founder and chairman of New Life Ministries, Steve Arterburn. Steve, it's an honor to have you on the show today. Are you ready to help men plug in and recharge?
You bet, Jeff, and I'm really glad to be with you. Appreciate the work that you do. Us men, we need all the help we can get, as you know.
Absolutely. So tell me, Steve, how are you doing?
Doing all right. I just got back. We took 200 people to Greece, and that was an exciting trip from our radio audience. We take a trip every year, and now we're gearing up for a men's golf trip over to Ireland. If anybody's interested in that, they can, let me know. Be happy to put you on board. We have great trips here at New Life, but they're awfully draining. But the cool thing is we get to really connect with folks and discover that we're all in this together. You know, our ministry at New Life, we're just all fellow strugglers, and we're grateful that God lets us help people whenever we get to.
Absolutely. You know what? I might be interested in that golf trip. Now, are you going to play at the British Open?
You know, we've got I think 5 of these amazing, unheard of golf courses over there that we're going to visit. And we've never done anything like this before. And we hired a new guy, and he said, hey, let me organize this. And I'm really hoping that some men's lives are really going to be changed by, maybe they wouldn't go to, just a normal kind of retreat thing. Right. But because I love golf so much, we can get them away for a little while for this.
Hey, you're right, Steve. Any vehicle we can use to reach men, man, I'm all for that. Okay, yeah. So before we get into the topic today, claiming victory over sexual temptation, I want to ask you about one of your recent books, The Mediterranean Love Plan. Now, yeah. Gentlemen, if you have any kind of a pulse, just that title alone should pique your interest. So in the book, Steve, you talk about the grand amore of marriage and how the 7 secrets to passion can help a married man and woman attain it. Of those 7 secrets, and feel free to list them if you want to, which one would you say is the toughest for men to practice and why?
Well, I think we start with the first one, which is the secret of attunement. Now, just so people know, this is a very unusual marriage book because it's all about sexual intimacy and having romance and sexual fulfillment very late in life, and for people where it just died totally. It really has proven to be a way to bring back the passion and the romance. The 7th chapter, I'll say this first, and then I'll tell you about what I think is the most important. We don't start in the bedroom, but the 7th chapter is on combining the spiritual, the sacred, and the sexual. And you would be, I think, quite interested, most people would be, to know that the research proved out that Jewish women are the most sexually fulfilled group of women in the world.
Really?
And there's a reason for that. But let me get to what I think is the most important and most difficult secret. We start with attunement. Now, the culture, every one of these has a culture associated with it. But the culture of attunement is Italy. And if you were to film somebody in a conversation over in Italy, and then you compared that to conversations here in the United States, you would find that in Italy, people touch each other while they're talking 10 times more than we do in the United States. Now, the point of that is if you're touching someone, well, you're probably looking at them because then, so you don't touch the wrong place. And then you're drawing them in to you. And attunement isn't just about listening to somebody or tapping them on the arm or shoulder and touching them, but it is about developing kind of a sense, a third sense about where they are, what they're going through, what they're experiencing, how they're relating to things. If I'm in tune with you, I'm not telling you some ridiculous joke when you're in the midst of grieving. I'm not missing you. And so we talk about this attunement. And for the single people that read the book, there's a little piece in there about this touching thing. That the research shows that if you're a woman and you would like to have a date with somebody that you think is nice, one of the ways that we can bridge that disconnection is you very innocently and casually make a point while you're talking to touch the guy on the hand or arm or shoulder or something. What that says is, hey, I'm a safe female. I'm not uptight. I'm not protecting myself from you. I actually am able to have an adult conversation and in an adult relationship. You know, us guys, we're always bumping each other and patting each other on the rear and all that stuff. So this thing about attunement and touch is really the beginning of a very, very a strong relationship that leads to marriage. That's why we get married. We think, boy, this person gets me. I love it. But shortly after you eat the wedding cake, it's quite common that people get out of touch. And so I encourage people not to eat the wedding cake. A quick story about my wife and I. You know, we practice these things, and so far it's working pretty good. But right after we got married, I discovered that there was a slight little communication problem between the two of us. If I was a superhero, I would be known as Bullet Point Man. I want the bottom line, the headline, you know, what's on the line. Just tell me the main things. And if that was the case for her, she would be known as Wonder Word Woman. I mean, she turns a story into an art form. And so I had to adjust to that. I realized in doing that, that the devil wasn't in the details that I was missing. The delight was in the details. And she will say things to me to remind me, you know, hey, stay with me, stay in your body, those kind of things. But it begins with this great secret of attunement. We cover a lot of different things. We talk about playing. You know, you go to Spain, they're eating dinner at midnight, they're throwing plates, they're breaking them. That's where the world's largest food fight is, where they throw tomatoes at everybody. Running with the bulls. I've done running with the bulldogs, but never that. So we talk about play. One of the fascinating places is, of course, Greece, where there's this one island of Icaria where they say people go and they forget to die. They're so healthy and fulfilled. They walk about 200 miles more a year on average than we do in the U.S. So we talk about all these cultures, and we culminate with how do you have a sacred and also a sexual relationship that brings fulfillment into the later years. And people seem to really love this book, and it's fun. Every one of these 7 cultures has 13 different practical ways that you can implement the secret from that culture in your own life. So it doesn't just tell you about something, it tells you what to do about something.
Wow, that's amazing. Our sponsor, Audible, is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. With over 180,000 audiobooks to download right now, 2 of my favorites that I personally recommend are The Ragamuffin Gospel and If You Want to Walk on Water, You Got to Get Out of the Boat. To download your free audiobook today, go go to audibletrial.com/Men Unplugged. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Men Unplugged. Now let's get back to the show. So along those lines, Steve, for the guy who desires more passion in his marriage, which one of these secrets would you recommend that he starts with?
Well, you really should just start with the attunement, the first one in the book, and focus on how do I, in every area outside the bedroom, how do I get on her side? How do I start to understand life from her perspective, and really try to understand what she's going through, what she's feeling, seeing life from her perspective in a way that I never have been before, so that she notices that I'm not just listening, but I'm really trying to understand her and what she's going through.
I tell you what, we could sit here and talk about this all day, but let's do this. Let's plug into the topic today. From your own professional experience, why do men struggle with sexual temptation so much?
Well, I think, Satan has found the most fascinating, most powerful force in relationships, this thing called sexual intimacy. And, when it's right, it's just such an incredible experience. And I think, that Satan has found that this is the area that he can use the most to draw people away from the Lord. Not everybody has money, and so he can't use greed all the time. And not everybody has power, but everybody, almost everybody, can be lured away by sexual temptation if they're not following some guidelines that have worked since the beginning of time. Like, Job said over 2,000 years ago, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look upon the young women of the day. And he said, I'm going to look straight ahead. I'm not going to look to the right or the left. Well, that's a powerful thing. But he had to do it back then. There was no internet, no Facebook, all that. And so if we go back and we look at what other people have done, we can be protected. But I think it's a very, very alluring way for a quick escape. We're not judged when we're involved with pornography, or if there's an affair, you've got all this adrenaline and all of this fantasy going to make it special. And of course, anytime you get hooked on something outside of marriage, it makes the relationship inside of marriage so dull and boring because of the risk and the adrenaline. So let me tell you what I think is one of the most astounding things about pornography that really just in the past couple of years people start talking about this. And it's this. You can get addicted to anything. Gambling is an addiction that's just as powerful as drug addiction.
Right.
When it comes to pornography, you get the same dopamine rush that a gambler does when he wins or almost wins. Same kind of dopamine rush that a heroin addict gets when he gets a hit of heroin. It's just not as intense. But the things that those don't have, that a sexual experience with pornography does have, is what this oxytocin hormone that is released. Now, oxytocin is a bonding chemical. It's a bonding hormone. When a mother nurses her baby, that oxytocin is released, and it bonds a mom to her baby. Now, the interesting thing about all of that is this, that if the mother or the baby is threatened because she's bonded to it, like a lion roars outside the cave, she'll go kill that lion with supernatural strength because she's so bonded to the baby. Right. But when a man becomes bonded to pornography, and he does because of this, not just it becomes habitual, but there's this hormonal, physiological link or lockup to it. So not only does he get hooked on it, but just like a mother protecting her baby, he is going to protect what he is bonded to. So all of a sudden, this wife that he chose, now that he's involved with pornography, he can't stand her. He doesn't understand. Why is she so unattractive? Why is she so irritating to me? It's not just that the pictures he's looking at are perfect. It's that she's a threat to what he's bonded to. So he naturally is going to be aggressive toward anything that maybe could be a threat to what he's bonded to. So I think that's a draw, that's a pull. And of course, in the other research that's so powerful on the other end is that people discover that if you are a pornified man and your sexual experiences revolve around pornography, then you're not going to be able to be sexually competent with a real live woman. And we've seen secular publications like Time Magazine and others write full-length stories and specials on young guys giving it up, not because they, became believers or anything, but they give up pornography because they realize it neuters you. It destroys your ability to be a competent sexual man. So Satan uses all of this together to create something that more people struggle with than I know of anything. Alcoholism, 10%. Gambling, 3%. But this, I would say, conservatively, 60% of all men struggle in this area.
Well, I'll tell you what, in some form or fashion, right? And I'm glad that you mentioned that Job 31:1, because when I read this Every Man's Battle book that you wrote, when I read it 12 years ago, the verse that stuck with me was that Job 31:1. I made a covenant with my eyes not to look at a woman lustfully. And I'll tell you a quick story here. When I read that book, let me tell you, I took this to the extreme because I remember I was at this bank. I was depositing a check, and the bank teller was just wearing a low-cut blouse, and I was in the chapter about bouncing the eyes, and so I handed her this check, and I was looking at the ceiling, Steve, just looking at the ceiling the whole time. And she's like, "Sir, is there a problem?" And there's people behind me, and I'm just like, "No, just go ahead and deposit the check. I'm just checking out your ceiling tiles." I mean, it was, and so that's part of the reason for me that I stopped watching football games. I mean, because the cheerleaders.
Yeah.
One of the next things that you talk about is a man's Mustang mind, and you mentioned this in the book, and in how to tame it. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, what we try to do is provide some analogies that would work for people. And it seems to me that it's kind of accurate to say that the average American male or the normal guy kind of has a Mustang mind. And what we're talking about here is if you have a wild Mustang and, he's out on the range, you put him into a corral. Well, whatever you put in that corral with that Mustang, he's going to try to mount it and create a horse. He's going to try to have a sexual experience as a wild Mustang. That's what he's here on earth to do. So when we are men and we have this brain, whatever we let inside the brain, or as we say, inside the corral, we're going to want to have a sexual experience with whatever that is. And so if you let a woman in that corral and you start to obsess over her, you're going to want to have some kind of lustful sexual experience here. So we say, look, when something enters that corral, let's just open the corral gate and let's walk that out of there. And let's keep our mind clean. And, when I was exposed to pornography, I was 5 or 6 years old. My grandfather had it in his office. And my parents, for some reason, thought it was okay for me to go in that office, which it was not. I can still tell you what those images are today. I remember those images a lot of years later. And so we want to try to keep our corral clean. we want to try to not let stuff ever get in there because it's really hard to get it out. And if we can just see the reality that we're all in this together, you're not spiritually inferior. If you mess up in some way, you're like a lot of other guys. And every time you fail or struggle, you're just showing that you got to put a little more protection up there. You need to get a little more help, have some stronger boundaries. It's just an indication, hey, I don't have this figured out yet. And you just keep moving forward rather than let Satan tell you you're a failure and start to live in all of that horrible shame that gets you nowhere.
I'm telling you right now, for the listeners, if you haven't read this book already, you need to get this book. I'm telling you, it really helped me. You know, one of the verses that you mentioned in there is 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. And for me, I had to understand that the Holy Spirit resides in me. He resides in every believer, and that because of that, our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. When I got that, I was like, no, wait a second. My body's just not my own. I really had to respect God.
Well, you know, you talk about the seeker-friendly church. We just got back from Corinth, and
that was cool.
Well, yeah, and this is where these temples were located, where part of the worship was having sex with a prostitute. Now that's your seeker-friendly church right there, and here Paul comes along and says, wait a second. These temples, that's not really where the action is. It's your body. You're the temple. And he goes against, the honor of this big, huge temple. And so I just hope and pray that people would start to see that, you are the temple of the Lord. He lives within you. And then once you see it, then you're able to respond in a way that is worthy of God and what he deserves from you.
So, Steve, on that note, for a guy that has struggled with this in the past, what would you say to him right now?
Well, I'd say don't give up, and but you're going to have to come out of hiding if you want to do something about this. You can't do something about this on your own. You can't you can't get better keeping it a secret. You have to step up and be willing to get some help. And if you'll do that, the whole world will open up for you. It's pretty exciting when you think about it, that you can struggle, you can feel like a second-class Christian, and then all of a sudden, you start to do something that you've never done before. And you have a day where you were full of sexual integrity and purity. You honored God and your spouse. Man, I'm telling you, it makes a difference. You are a different person. You see the world differently, and you truly get to experience this transformation process where you never ever have to look back, and you never have to be that person again. That's what I'm hoping for everybody that's listening, is let's just move to the next level. Well, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you have to see that you have the problem and admit it. And then you have to, like it says in James 5:16, you have to say it out loud. You have to confess it. Don't keep it a secret. And then you have to accept responsibility for it. You cannot simply blame somebody else or live in your shame and get better. You accept responsibility to deal with it, and then things get awfully, awfully good for you as you start to transform little by little. But you have to come out of hiding. First step, willingness to come out of hiding.
And you know what? On those lines, I tell you, you mentioned the word transform, and when you can really lean on the Lord, you become empowered. I think that's your key there. You're empowered to know that you can do it again and again and again. All right, that wraps up the first portion of my interview with Steve Arterburn. Tune in to episode 11 as I wrap up that conversation with Steve. If you're battling with sexual temptation right now, as a single or married man, you can claim victory. First, lean on the Lord And secondly, continue to bounce your eyes. Remember Job 31:1. If you're married like me and you want to improve your marital intimacy with your wife, practice the law of attunement. And to help you in these areas, I've got a great resource for you, Covenant Eyes, the ultimate weapon against internet pornography. Sign up today using promo code Men Unplugged on our resources page to get your first month free. And hey, if you want to take the challenge with me, I've designed a really cool looking t-shirt that you can get right now on our store page. Until next time, stay plugged in and recharged.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. There's plenty more to see at menunplugged.net, including key resources and ways to engage with Jeff in his training and speaking forums. While there, don't forget to subscribe and receive a free gift. We look forward to you joining us next time here on the Men Unplugged Show.